Welcome back to Les Schwab Tire Center's Outdoor GPS, presented by Fisherman's Marine and Outdoor. Now it's time for your weekend tech tip, brought to you by Chevy Silverado.
Welcome back, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today. It is your Chevy Silverado Tech Tip of the Week. Now, there's lots of different things that we like to use when we're chasing steelhead. Quite honestly, it's exhausting. There are so many different rod, reel, combo setups, different ways to go after them, different baits, float fish, don't float fish, throw a spinner, throw a spoon, use eggs, don't use eggs. How about you? I mean, it never ends. It's exhausting. We have to kind of narrow these things down to techniques, rod and reel combos that we will actually use, right? Because a lot of times you're not going to want to invest, a pile of money in a rod and reel combo that just doesn't get used as much as it should, right? Now, there are some folks that'll buy one or two setups and they'll continually change from one setup or one style, one technique to another. And then there's a lot of people that'll have one rod for each and every technique. Some people, believe it or not, will walk down to a river with 4 or 5 rods in their hands. Don't do that. I'm just throwing that out there. But I get it, right? Everybody wants to be able to go from one to the other. Now, I will admit, I'm pretty much a one show pony, whatever the heck. Thanks. I will admit that I do it that way. I like to carry one rod. Sometimes I'll carry two, where I'll have my bobber and bead rod and a bobber and jig rod, which could have a pink worm on it or just a standard arrow float on it or arrow jig on there. It just depends on how things go. So sometimes I'll carry that second rod, but 9 out of 10 times, no. It's just one rod, a float, a piece of lead, and a bead. This is significantly different than that. This is a setup that Cameron Black brought in just a couple, 3 weeks ago, and I stood right here, I said, man, I don't like that. There's so much going on. But once I had a chance to break it down a little bit and get an idea of what this really was for and how to actually fish it, and then how it feels in your hand, I was really, really impressed. And I kind of broke it down to where I think once you get past all this extra stuff on here, it's a pretty simple system. But again, there's a lot going on. So I'm gonna, before we go over to our demo over here, I'm gonna do it for what we call the jam, so you can see all this, right? Now, it's pretty simple. It's a bobber stop to your, of course, bead that stops your float from going past that particular bobber stop. You got a corky that's right above that, and then your float. Now, there's a lot of different of these clear floats that are out there. Some of them are marked in grams, some of them are marked in ounces. I've never understood that, but at the very least, this one is a 25 gram. It's probably that half-ounce float. Well, actually, it's probably a 3/4 now that I think about it, because I'll tell you what's underneath it. Then an inline half-ounce weight. Okay, now this is just your standard bobber and jig setup. Nothing fancy there from your stopper to the inline weight. There's nothing really fancy for that. Here's where things change. Underneath that, I've got 4.5 feet of 15-pound CXX monofilament, and then that goes all the way down to another small swivel right in here that you can kind of see on my thumb. Just a small swivel and a couple of really small split shots that I had. And then back up here in the middle of this bumper is the largest split shot, and that's right in the middle. So you got your inline weight, you have your split shot in the middle of that bumper, and then below that you got another small split shot setup, and then your swivel. Yes, I know. That's a lot, okay? In the big picture of things, this is 50% more gear, if not even more, than what I typically fish steelhead with on my rod and reel combo. So again, all that being said, from the swivel up to that bobber stop, that's its own little world. Quite honestly, that's where everything stays. If you do get hung up, 90% of the time, it's gonna be your bead or your bait that's actually below it. So you're not breaking off this whole system. Now, will it happen? Sure, okay, it's called fishing, stuff happens. Below that though, I've got a 20-inch leader from the swivel to my bead, and this is in this particular case is a 12 mil trout bead, hard bead, and then a size 2 hook. So this is certainly different than what a lot of you may have fished with. I know that there's some out there that have fished with this setup before. There are several guides that use it with their clients for a reason. It's relatively easy to cast, even though you got all this going on below that inline weight. It floats amazing. Now, I've only had a chance to play with this for one day out on the water this week, and I found it to be very useful in heavy water, right? When you've got pretty significant flow, where this exact setup would get this bead down, and you could, with this rod in particular, I could feel this little tiny split shot ticking along the bottom where that inline weight and bobber weren't even moving. Okay, I mean, you could tell that the gear was down there. That bobber wanted to lean down just ever so slightly. You knew that your gear was down there kind of bowed and on the bottom. You knew you were fishing. But the thing of it is, with this particular rod, this is the SR 1143-2 from Edge. This is an amazing rod. Okay, I'm just going to go there, all right? Do you have to have this kind of a setup to fish this system? No, but this is unbelievable. It's an 11'4", 6 to 15 pound rating, and it's the fast to medium action. Now, what that means is you got a lot of backbone, and then the tip gets very, very soft. Now, Alan is getting, I got cameras going everywhere right now because he's trying to keep up with what I'm doing. But what I want you to see, and I'm going to try to fit this in here, Alan, so bear with me. I'm going to get it. Is you can see the bend is well in front of the ferrule, all right? And you can see that rod tip right there has got some very good bend to it. Yes, it's an 11'4". It's a long rod. But this thing here, the way it's designed with that fast action, okay, it's unbelievable. Y'all know that I like to fish 10 to 20s, 10-6, 10 to 20 edge rod. They're quite a bit stiffer. I shouldn't even say it that way. They're just certainly more backbone to them, a lot more oomph, right? This rod throws that half ounce with all this split shot, which I'm saying is close to 3/4 of an ounce, maybe even a little bit more than that, like a rifle. I mean, it is gone. The first cast I made with it, I had to stop it because it was going and it wasn't stopping. Yeah, so a lot of that falls down to the reel. I did match this up with a 35 size from Abu. It's just a really nice reel. But at the very least, when we come back from this break, I'm going to show you all the little pieces here, all right, and how to put this thing together. It's a little cumbersome, but once you've put it all together, I really do think that this is something that you're going to be able to use in the boat, drift boat, power boat, whatever, or walk in. Because that's what I'm picturing now, is where I could actually use this even for summer steelhead, believe it or not. We'll be back with that in just a couple of minutes.
Outdoor GPS is brought to you by Chevy Silverado and the impressive new Turbo Max engine. Flex your muscle with the strongest, most advanced Silverado ever. Official truck of Outdoor GPS.